Hello students, today we'll see the theory part 5 of chapter 9, Hydrocarbon, in which we will cover the NCERT section 9.2.4. So, this is our disclaimer. After attending this lecture, you will be able to draw and differentiate between the various conformations of ethane. So, your ethane can exist in multiple spatial orientations, which we will define later. So, they are called as conformations of ethane and they vary from one to another in terms of their energy. According to the NCERT, we will be covering the NCERT section 9.2.4, whose name is Conformations, and then after we will see the summary section. So let us start with the topic of structure of CC bond in alkanes. Here we will see the CC bond formation in case of ethane. Now, alkane contains a single covalent bond between carbon atoms. This means that each carbon atom shares one pair of electrons with another carbon atom, similar to how your friend might share a pair of headphones. Next, the single covalent bond that is between two carbon atoms is named as sigma bond. The sigma bond are the strongest type of covalent bond and are formed by the direct overlap of orbitals. Sigma bond is formed by the head-on-head overlap of sp3 hybrid orbitals. So hybrid orbitals, you know it very well, are a mix of different atomic orbitals which allows for stronger and more stable bond as compared to the pure atomic orbitals. As an example, in ethane, each carbon atom uses an sp3 hybridized orbital to form the carbon-carbon sigma bond. So this is a specific case of how these bonds are formed in alkane. Next, we have a visual representation of bonding in ethane with an image. This helps us to see that how the sp3 hybrid orbital of two carbons are overlapping to form the sigma bond between the two carbon atoms. Finally, we can conclude that electron distribution in sigma molecular orbital is symmetrical around the carbon-carbon internuclear axis. So this symmetry contributes to the overall stability of the bond in alkanes. You can see here in the diagram as well that the sp3 hybrid orbital are overlapping, and they are overlapping in a way so that they can create an symmetrical environment. Let us now move on to the cause of rotation. So your alkanes are capable of showing rotations. What is the reason behind it? Let's see. So the role of symmetry in alkanes is important here. Symmetry only is the thing that allows for free rotation of carbon atoms around the carbon-carbon bond without breaking the bond. So this is the key feature of alkanes that affects their structure and properties. So basically, since it is symmetrical, if you just rotate the carbon-carbon along the single bond, then due to this symmetry, the energy is not that much varied, and therefore you can do this rotation at room temperature. Or you can say you can observe this rotation at room temperature. Now, we see that rotating one part of the molecule around the bond axis does not change certain aspects of the molecule. So this is an important point to consider when thinking about the molecular rotation. So specifically, the overall electronic structure of the molecule remains unchanged during this rotation. This is again due to the symmetric nature of the sigma bond. This means that the electrons are still distributed in the same way, which is crucial for maintaining the molecule's stability. Additionally, the energy of the bond is not affected by this rotation. This stability in energy is what allows the molecule to freely rotate without requiring additional energy input. So here is an animation to illustrate free rotation in ethane molecule. So you can see very clearly that how your one carbon is kept still and the other one is rotating. And that rotation can be observed in terms of their hydrogen rotating. Okay, you can see that hydrogen is moving. And you can also see that between the two carbon atoms, there is no change in the shape and all because the orbitals have been overlapped to create a symmetrical environment. Now, this rotation around the carbon-carbon bond creates different spatial arrangement. Finally, we learn that ethane molecule can rotate freely around this axis, resulting in 3D shapes. Now we are starting with the conformation topic. The free rotation around a carbon-carbon bond allows for different spatial arrangement of atoms, which are known as conformations. So this is a key feature of hydrocarbon and affects their properties and reactions at the same time. Conformations are also referred to as conformers or rotational isomers, as they are interconverted by rotating the molecule. Now, different conformations can have a somewhat change in their energy. So they are present at different energy level, but not as significant so that they can restrict the bonding. This means that some conformations are more stable than another up to some extent, depending on the energy required to maintain that particular arrangement. Now the question is that where is that energy change coming from? Because the electronic environment between the two carbons are not changing. And what is changing? So here we have an image illustrating the concept of conformation again, but from a different view. Now this helps you to understand that the relative conformations of the hydrogen is changing with respect to each other. You can see that hydrogens are in some cases, in some part of the rotation, it is in front of each other, and in some part of the cases, it is opposite to each other. Now that leads to various spatial arrangements. So if I take a ethane molecule, it can exhibit a infinite number of conformations due to this free rotation. So this flexibility is a fundamental characteristic of many hydrocarbon and plays a crucial role in their chemical behavior. Next, we will now try to study the topic of different energies associated with various conformations of molecules. Now we see that rotation within a molecule is not completely free. Yeah, it is free, but not to I would say, a null state. So this is due to different strains that are resulting in varying energy levels. This means as the parts of the molecule rotate, they encounter resistance that affects their energy. Now, two types of strains are there that influence the energy of molecular conformation. So these strains are key factors in determining how the molecule can rotate and what energy levels they can achieve. Now we have a detailed comparison between the torsional strain and steric strain. These are the two strains. Torsional strains involve repulsion, a repulsive interaction between electron clouds of adjacent atoms, often seen in a simple molecule like ethane. So you can see here that the electron clouds of CH bond, of the two CH bond, are repelling each other if they are parallel to each other, right? So you can see it very clearly. Whereas the steric strain, on the other hand, involves the repulsion between the bulkier atoms or groups. So suppose you have two methyl groups. Now these two bulkier methyl groups can show repulsion. So this is the one kind between the shared pair of electron, and this is the second kind, which is the latter part of the bond, which is suppose CH3 in this case. Now each type of strain affects how a molecule can move and interact. Remember, these two hydrogen will not show the steric strain because their size is too small, whereas these two methyls can show the steric strain because of their bulkiness. Now moving on to conformations of ethane. So we'll see various conformation of this C2H6 now. Ethane can adopt, various conformations due to the free rotation. You have seen just now that it can adopt infinite numbers of conformation due to the free rotation. But we will take some specific one. The first one is which we are looking at is eclipsed conformation. The next conformation is staggered conformation, and the third conformation is the skew conformation. Now we'll try to understand each of this one by one. So let us start our discussion on eclipsed conformation of the hydrocarbon first of all. So here we see an image that represents the eclipsed conformation. So this will help you to understand how the atoms are positioned in their conformation. You can see that the hydrogen atoms are aligned in such a way that they are in front of each other. This means the hydrogen atom on the front carbon are directly behind those on the back carbon. Now, this is the key feature of the eclipse conformation. Then we are now seeing that what kind of strains are present here. So strains are forces that can affect the stability of molecule. We have seen it. Now we will see what are the type of strains available in this eclipse conformation. I have told you earlier that two hydrogens are not bulky enough to show steric repulsion. So the only strain that they can show is the torsional strain. So torsional strain, you all know, it occurs when atoms are forced into an energetically unfavorable position like twisting a rubber. You can see that the electron clouds are in front of each other, and that is resulting in the torsional strain in case of eclipse conformation of ethane. There is no steric strain in this conformation because steric strain usually happens when larger atoms or groups are close to each other. But since we have only small hydrogen atom, that is not an issue at all. Now we learn that the maximum torsional strain is found in the eclipse conformation. Remember this. So this means that the molecule is under a lot of stress during the alignment of molecule in case of eclipse conformation. Hence, we can conclude that the eclipse conformation is the least stable one due to its high repulsion and maximum energy. Of course, this is happening because of the alignment of the atoms. I would say specifically the hydrogen atoms, in which the carbon-hydrogen shared pair of electrons are occurring in front of each other, making them energetically unfavorable arrangement. Now we are going to discuss the staggered conformation of hydrocarbon. Now we see an image that represents the staggered conformation. Notice how the atoms are arranged in this particular structure. What you can see that hydrogen atoms in the staggered conformation are apart from each other. This arrangement helps to reduce the repulsion between the atoms. Okay, this arrangement helps us to reduce the repulsion between the electron cloud. Sorry, not the atoms, but the electron cloud, because we know it very well that hydrogen do not show any steric strain. Next, let us look what kind of strain is present in this conformation. We'll just list them. We have two type of strains, torsional strain. We'll see that if one of them is there or if both of them is there. The first point on the list tells us that there is no torsional strain in the staggered conformation. So this means atoms are not experiencing any twisting force. And this next point highlights that there is no steric strain either, as the hydrogen atoms are small and they do not crowd each other. So finally, we can say that torsional strain is at a minimum in this conformation as well as the steric strain, making the staggered conformation the most stable one compared to other conformations in case of your ethane. Now we will move upon the staggered conformation further. So let us explore the electronic effects associated with the staggered conformation. So this will help us to understand why certain conformations are more stable than others. At this point, we see that the favorable sigma to sigma star donation occurs here. So this is a type of electronic interaction that contributes to the stability of staggered conformation. Basically, here we learn that the carbon-hydrogen bonding orbital overlap with an adjacent carbon-hydrogen anti-bonding orbital. This overlap is crucial for the stability of the staggered conformation. Consider the example of ethane. So ethane is a simple hydrocarbon that helps us to visualize the staggered conformation. We now see an image that shows the staggered conformation of ethane. You can see that the bonding orbital of CH is kind of available to overlap with the anti-bonding orbital of CH, right? So if this is the bonding one, okay, then in the opposite part, the smaller orbital formed is the anti-bonding one. We have seen this thing in the case of your chemical bonding, right? So we can say that staggered conformation are the most stable conformers. Not only they have a minimum torsional and steric strain, they have an extra factor for stabilizing them, which is this electronic factor, where the electron is delocalizing from a sigma to sigma star. So this is The reason your staggered conformation is the most stable one. Now, we will study the concept of skew conformation in hydrocarbons. Any intermediate conformation that you observe between the eclipsed and staggered conformation can be named as skew conformation, right? So this means the molecule is not fully aligned with like in eclipsed or not fully spaced out like in staggered. So here we have an image that visually shows how skew conformations occurs. Notice how the atoms are positioned in a way that is neither fully eclipsed nor fully staggered. So you can see through rotation that if you are taking pictures of the molecule at different instants, then at some point it will be neither eclipsed nor your staggered conformation. Then in that case, you will name it as skew conformation. What are the strains that are present in molecule in case of skew conformation? So torsional strain is present in case of skew conformation, but it is less than what we see in eclipse conformation. So this strain comes from the resistance to twist around the bond. Of course, since we are taking the case of ethane and we have hydrogen molecule only to compare the steric strain, therefore, it will not show any steric strain due to negligible size of hydrogen atom. So, skew conformations have varying degree of torsional strain depending on the instant which you are noticing the molecule. This means that the amount of strain can change depending on how close the conformation is to either eclipsed or staggered. So if it is close to eclipsed one, it will be less stable, and if it is close to staggered one, it will be more stable. Finally, the energy and stability of your skew information are intermediate between eclipse and staggered. This means they are not as high energy and unstable as eclipse, and not as low energy and unstable as staggered. So finally, just we can conclude our today's lecture. So here we have summary of that, starting with the bond formation in ethane. We know that your ethane contains single CC covalent bond which are formed by the sp3 overlap of one carbon atom with the sp3 orbital of another carbon atom, which results in the formation of sigma bond. Now, this sp3 hybrid orbitals overlap head on head, means they come in front of each other and they overlap with their head. Okay, so to take your whole hybrid orbital, the part where your orbital is attached to atom, so that can be considered as a tail, and the lobe side is your head. So they are overlapping with each other in a head-on-head fashion. Now, they have an symmetrical electronic distribution around the CC axis, right? So you have seen this thing that due to only sp3 hybrid orbital combining with each other, they have a symmetrical electronic distribution around the CC axis. Now, this electronic distribution, which is symmetrical, is the reason for rotation in case of alkanes. So, due to this symmetrical distribution, free rotation is possible around CC bond. Now, the case is that this rotation is of course free, but still it needs some energy. But at the same time, it is not changing the overall electronic structure and the bond energy of the molecule. The stability of the molecule remains intact despite this rotation. But this rotation creates different 3D arrangements known as conformations, right? So we have various conformations possible. We can also name it as rotational conformers because the conversion of one form to another is occurring due to rotation of the molecule against each other, right? Now, what is conformation? We talked about conformation in detail also. So they are the different spatial arrangement of atoms that are resulting due to the rotation part. So this rotation allows the molecule to adopt various shapes. These different spatial arrangements are also called conformers or rotational isomers. They are essentially different versions of the same molecule. So we have one more name for this conformation, which is rotamers. Each conformation has different energy level. This means that some conformation are more stable than other depending on their energy. So basically, this energy that your ethane molecule is getting to show various rotation is coming from the room temperature. So you know it very well that your room has some amount of thermal energy due to certain temperature, and that thermal energy is being used by the ethane molecule to show various conformations. But we can have an infinite number of possible conformation due to this free rotation. Okay, and why there are different energy levels? So we have the role played by the torsional strain and steric strain that we have seen just now. Further, what were the strains that affect the conformation? The first one is the torsional strain. So it occurs due to repulsion between the electron clouds. So basically, when the electron cloud, which is the shared pair of electron clouds between two atoms, if they are close to each other, they can repel each other due to the same nature of the charge. Of course, it will occur more significantly between the bonds of adjacent atoms. That means the strain happens when atoms that are next to each other in the molecule have bond that repel each other. Now, it is highlighted that the torsional strain is common in simple molecule like ethane. So ethane is a basic hydrocarbon, and understanding its behavior helps us grasp more complex molecules. After that, we talked about the steric strain. So this is another type of strain that can affect your molecular conformation. Steric strain involves repulsion between two bulky groups. So what are those bulky groups? We have seen just now the example of those. So those were your possible bulkier groups. It was CH3 group. So if you have two CH3 groups, they are capable of showing the steric strain. Means they are bulky enough to repel each other or to push each other, causing strain. Now we see that steric strain occur due to physical crowding. So this is like when you try to fit too many people in a small room and they start bumping into each other, right? And this thing is common in case of larger molecules. Now moving on to the types of conformation. So we have talked about the types of conformations in terms of ethane. The first one was eclipsed conformation. So this is the one of the ways ethane molecule can arrange themselves. In the eclipsed conformation, the hydrogen atoms are aligned with each other. This means they are directly in a line when viewed along the carbon atom. Next, this alignment leads to maximum torsional strain. So torsional strain is the resistance to twisting around the bond. After that, because of this strain, the eclipsed conformation is the least stable and has the highest energy compared to other conformation in case of ethane. What about the steric strain? So interestingly, despite the torsional strain, there is no steric strain in the conformation. So steric strain occurs when atoms are too close to each other and are too bulky. But that is not the case here. Now let us move on to the staggered conformation. So this is another arrangement of the ethane molecule. In staggered conformation, there is no torsional strain. The hydrogen atoms are positioned as far apart as possible, reducing resistance to twisting. Therefore, this makes the staggered conformation the most stable and the lowest in energy in case of ethane. It is like finding the most comfortable position to sit in. Additionally, they have a sigma to sigma star donation, which is a kind of stabilizing factor because here the electrons are being delocalized. So two things are there. First of all, they lack strain. They don't have any strain, neither the torsional nor the steric. At the same time, they have an additional stabilizing key factor, which is sigma to sigma star donation or sigma to sigma star orbital overlap. Now we talked about the third conformation, which was Q conformation. So this is an intermediate arrangement between the eclipsed and the staggered conformation. So of course, you have seen that we can have an infinite number of isomers possible based on the rotation, but we can't name each of them, right? So if it is infinite, we can't name them. It's obvious. So we have taken the two predominant one, which is eclipsed and staggered. And apart from those, each conformation is named as skew conformation. Now, its energy is also intermediate between the eclipsed and the staggered one. It is not strained as the eclipsed conformation and not as relaxed as the staggered as well. Consequently, the skew conformation has intermediate stability and energy. So it is like being halfway between the standing and sitting comfortably, right? Similar to the eclipse conformation, there is no steric strain in the skew conformation. The atoms are not too close to each other. Then we have now covered the main types of ethane's conformation. Understanding this can help us predict the behavior of molecule in different environments. One more important thing that we talked about skew conformation was that if your skew conformation that you are noticing, if it is close to the eclipse conformation in terms of their angle, then it will be less stable as compared to those skew conformations which are close to the staggered one, right? You got it? Because the torsional strain is minimum in that case. So this was all for today's lecture. Thank you for attention. I hope this lecture was helpful.